Well, we got this interview coming up that you did with Tony Parrott at MSD, and it's talking about infrastructure. And, regardless of the season, regardless of the weather, MSD is always on the job, keeping us safe. And what you're doing is finding out how we are staying connected through them.
I love it because MSD always stays on the forefront. They always have their finger on the pulse, and it says a lot for the city of Louisville in comparison to other cities as well. But I don't want to steal any more thunder, so let's just take a look. So I'm here to do a very fascinating subject matter with MSD today, and I want to welcome back again Mr. Tony Parrott. And Tony, welcome back again.
Thank you for coming back.
I'm finding today's topic to be so fascinating to me because recently on the news, I was hearing about under the Biden administration where they're coming with some proposals for helping infrastructures for different cities. And when I heard it, I'm like, now what does that mean and how does that all unfold? So you're going to be here to explain to me because I understand that you are engaged with other cities nationally as this is unfolding and coming out. So what does all that mean?
Well, thank you. We have had a lot of conversations with our peer utilities across the country. And for decades, actually, we've been lobbying for more investment in water and wastewater infrastructure. A lot of our cities across the country have infrastructure that dates back to the Civil War days and even earlier. And right now, we're having really trouble with rehabbing and replacing that infrastructure. And so we have been lobbying for Congress to come up with a proactive infrastructure plan that will address water and wastewater infrastructure as a priority. And the reason is because the most recent American Society of Civil Engineer report gives the nation's water and wastewater infrastructure a D from a report card perspective. And so when you think about all of the issues that has been happening over the last few years, whether it's the water system in Flint or the issue more recently that happened down in Texas with the water system and also in Jackson, Mississippi with the water system, all of these systems are at a point to where they're at a point of disrepair. And so what the Biden Rescue Plan is proposing is a significant investment in infrastructure and a significant investment in water and wastewater infrastructure, which is so important because we have only limited capability to be able to fund certain projects. MSD rolled out our 20-year critical repair plan 3 years ago, and that 20-year plan called for $4 billion of need locally for wastewater, for flood protection, for stormwater, and also for other assets. And so if you've noticed, we've been having a lot of street cave-ins because of large diameter pipes that date back to like 1864 that are just collapsing under the street. And so what this infrastructure plan is about is investing in infrastructure, and it's also investing in creating local jobs, and we think that's important as well.
So when I think about this, and there are other cities, are there certain areas of the country where it's more needed versus elsewhere? And how do you get selected, or is it just a process of you just putting forth the proposal and submitting it?
Well, there's a lot of different processes. There's processes that we work with the state through the state revolving loan fund, where every year we have projects that we submit for consideration for low interest loans. Most recently, we were just granted a WIFIA loan for $95 million to replace the aging biosolids system down at our Morris-Forman wastewater treatment plant. But what we think is that there's needs across this county and across this city. There's needs across the region. There's needs across the nation. And so this funding gap is trillions of dollars. So just keep that in mind. So this infrastructure plan is calling about a $111 billion investment in water and wastewater. Even with that investment, the funding gap is very significant.
Okay, so when you threw out that figure, $1 trillion, and if the funding is much needed, how does it get paid for?
Well, we fund most of our projects by issuing debt. or whether we go after a low interest loan or something like that. But the bottom line is, if it's a debt or if it's a low interest loan, we have to pay it back. And so the only way right now that we have to pay it back is to increase the rates that we charge the community. So that's why we're lobbying for more of a infusion of grant programs for water and wastewater infrastructure, because those grant programs do not create additional debt that is going to burden the local ratepayers.
So it sounds like this is where the proposed bill would come in to help with all of that then? Because when you say ratepayers, and I know for a lot of people it's like, oh my God, but it's much needed. So now I'm just wondering, does the bill have a big impact on this?
Well, I think that what we're hoping for is, as I said before, that there's more grants than low interest loans, because the more grants we get, the less money we have to pay back when we build infrastructure. But the other important thing about investment in infrastructure, for every dollar that is invested in infrastructure, $2.62 returns to the local economy, because you're creating jobs and you're creating opportunities for local businesses to participate in those infrastructure projects. So small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses can be involved, and also the local job creation is great construction jobs that will help put people back to work.
You know, it's always great information that you bring back from MSD. They're just really doing some phenomenal work to keep us ahead of the curve, as you would say.
And I would have to say, at the helm is Mr. Tony Parrott, and
Right.
he's a visionary, and he's taken this task, mightily, and it just speaks volumes to where we are. So my hat goes off to Tony Parrott.
We'll take another break and back with more right after this.